About 2 years ago, a class on the management of large churches was offered by Meadville Lombard. As our final project for that class, we take a look at the critical question of Unitarian Universalist ministerial formation. What is it, and why is it crucial in the light of changing cultural circumstances and economic realities? How do our two Unitarian Universalist identity schools fit into the mix of education? Are they critical to the sustenance and future of our faith? At first, the answers seemed obvious, but as we talked with colleagues, mentors, and leaders in the UUA, the challenges and ideals and nature of formation became more elusive, and the strategies for supporting the same less clearly defined. Let us take a journey and look together at what it means, briefly, to be formed as a minister within a Unitarian Universalist faith.
I'm a master of divinity. At least that's what it says on the piece of paper that I have filed away somewhere. Of all of the titles for graduate degrees in higher education, the one for people who prepare for ministry has always seemed to me to be the most presumptuous. It sounds like a title that ought to be splashed in 40-point show card font across a comic book cover rather than across a college diploma. And how do you even study divinity anyway, let alone master it? This, of course, is the koan, the spiritual conundrum that every seminary who enters an MDiv degree program has to answer for themselves.
So I think that these two particular schools hold the opportunity for conversations and academic scholarship in a way that's quite focused and quite intentional, very different from other kinds of theological schools.
If the schools went away, could our identity persist and be passed down? Well, yes. Of course. And it would not have the institutional depth or heft that it has now. I'm sure there'd be a sense of cutting and pasting that would go on. You have to wonder how weighty would be the identity that was passed down by all these informal methods. I think you need some people in some places that are dedicated to this, not for whom it is a second rank, the second order matter of importance, but for whom it is first order.
How is a minister formed? Where do we get our theological identity? How do we learn to think and act and be ministerial within our communities and indeed within our world? In the midst of this journey, Meadville Lombard began talking with Andover Newton about combining schools. This development caused the questions to shift from why identity schools are important within the mix of ministerial formation options to what can we do now to ensure that what identity schools brought, explicitly or implicitly, to the broader association will not be lost. What will we need from congregations, from mentors, scholars, and church leaders to ensure that our faith continues to move forward into history with its unique features, with ideals of justice, of diversity, of continually searching for deeper ways of seeking truth? While scholarship is clearly a critical part of our seminary's work and raison d'etre, the nature of ministerial formation seems both more at risk and more easily addressed and supported by the UUA and by our broader Unitarian Universalist community. The following voices help clarify the nature of formation and the ways they feel it is most effectively accomplished.
Part of what it really means to become a master of divinity is to learn to see the world through theological eyes. And I use this metaphor, eyes of theology, very purposely, rather than to say something like think theological. Because I think it's a better way to talk about what a theological education really entails. Theological education is not just about thinking in new ways as a result of reading or discussion that you have undertaken. Rather, it's about approaching all of the experiences of your life with a different set of eyes.
All of the classes that I take here come from a Unitarian Universalist perspective. So it doesn't matter, it's not just the Unitarian Universalist history or the polity. It's classes on contextual context of ministry that is inherently from a Unitarian Universalist perspective. It's classes on pastoral care that's inherently from the Unitarian Universalist perspective. We talk about, we have some huge theological differences among ourselves, but we also have huge theological differences from mainline Protestant seminaries.
You could transplant that into another setting, but that the container within which those experiences occur are not replicable outside of a UU context because of the deep religious and theological diversity that one encounters here.
Already been laid out for you, and you've already signed on to it, so you know what it is. You at least have the script, and you can just spout it. And I don't think that that's true, with us. So if we don't have our seminaries, where are you going to get that?
Are not Unitarian Universalists and are surprised and sometimes shocked by the questions we ask, which are questions which would not raise shock or surprise here. So that suggests to me, either because of what we do or because of the kinds of students we attract and the congregations we serve, there is greater openness to that conversation and to the possibility that maybe there's a better word than God for the reality toward which that is trying to point.
If formation is critical, then the kinds of questions we ask, the ones posed by mentors, teachers, and classmates, must address the foundational nature of our Unitarian Universalist identity. They must focus on how this newfound ministry will be lived, how it will be viscerally answered, and how it will be engaged in the world, not in ways that are transient, but ones in which depth of purpose and dedication to deeply held convictions are found.
I think that the primary thing that UU seminaries provide seminarians and ministers, and by virtue of the work that ministers do, congregations and congregants, is the laboratory and location of the passage of UU culture.
Unitarian Universalism as a whole, my whole life as a Unitarian Universalist minister has challenged me to act in ways that are consistent with what I preach. And I hope that the church helps people do that too. For me to actually put my time, my money, my energy, my body out on the line to support or defend the beliefs that I say that I have has been a critical part of the practice of being a Unitarian Universalist.
But I think that's the distinction that I found in Unitarian Universalism from the churches I grew up in and have known since, and that is that the issue for me has not been what is the truth, but in this process of searching for truth, what does that say about how I live? And that has been the fundamental question that is religion for me, is the effort to find a way to live with integrity in a world where the questions are never finally answered.
coming from a strictly academic approach to theology to a seminary where theology is something that's done rather than something that one has, to an understanding of theology as an engaged kind of praxis in the world.
Because ours is a faith which celebrates freedom of individual choice and which holds ambiguity as a virtue with which to engage, it is essential that Unitarian Universalist ministers are given the tools they need to hold the center of Unitarian Universalism, even as they remain open to the emerging truths which life offers. We are a people at once able to seek depth of meaning and to act within the world. To hold this as ministers, we must remain open to the possibilities presented by the world, while simultaneously holding on to our tradition and heritage. We are called to lead lives of integrity, not only by our faith community or by the world around us, but also by the greater reality in which we live and breathe and have our being.
Universalism is rooted in a deep sense that we have a ministry to the world.
Seminaries are places for new ideas and new theologies to germinate. But our churches is where they take root. It is in the community that lived experience intersects with theory and forms something real, something tangible, something by which lives can be lived, by which meaning and purpose can be found.
In some ways, contemporary Unitarian Universalism is a concentrated laboratory of some of these dynamics, is because the notion of a chosen religious way is deep within the core of the culture of Unitarian Universalism. And to describe this as a group of folks who are choosing their religious path and are therefore heretically religious is also to say that they're reflexively religious, not only aware of the plurality of religious ways in the world, not only acknowledging different religious paths, but also interpreting them as increasingly plausible options for oneself.
What we can offer, I think, is a sort of guidance to friends, again, of people who we've been involved in doing this for a while. Mm-hmm. We know the pitfalls. We know that what's so important, for example, interaction with Buddhist traditions is not beliefs. The Four Noble Truths aren't propositions to believe. They're injunctions to act. We know how to look at religion in multiple registers. We've struggled with issues of appropriation and how to balance accountability with reciprocity in that. And so I think we find ourselves in many ways right at the center. As you were saying, we're not on the edges. We're not on the margins. We really can be articulating a spiritual core to what is at the center of politics in many ways throughout the world, and a kind of hunger for interreligious action. And I think it's very important that we claim that history, that we have done this. It's something we're proud of. It's something we're going to continue doing, and that we will unabashedly invite other people to join us in the process, either as members or the old Marxist term is fellow travelers.
We raise these questions, pose these opinions, set forth these ideas, not to engender fear or find fault, not even to say that identity schools are the only way to foster formation of Unitarian Universalist ministers. We offer this in the awareness that we now exist in a liminal space. In this place, we can act to ensure these things that we value are held in trust by a larger Unitarian Universalist community. Before decisions are made reactively, before they are made out of haste or fear, before they are made without considered judgment. This is a time when, as a Unitarian Universalist community, we can claim those values which are most important to us and put our resources into supporting those elements. The formation of our ministers is no small matter. Who we choose to lead us and how we train them in the ways of ministerial formation will have lasting impact on the future of Unitarian Universalism in the world. Let us act mindfully. Let us act intentionally. But most of all, let us act. May the roar and rain go by.
But given the enormous power that the laity has in our movement, and given the high turnover among church membership, that's a lot of inconstancy. And if there is not at the same time a still point in this turning world, then I'm not sure that we can long exist as one institution if it's all on ball bearings and always moving.
Peace shall walk softly through these rooms, touching.
How would you get your identity as a Unitarian?
Till every casual corner blooms into a shrine. With laughter drown the raucous shout, and though their sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and hold